This premium weeb warship is a copy-paste of a tech tree warship, a French one. This is the Tier VIII Premium BA Utnapishtim. Utnapishtim, I have no idea how you're supposed to pronounce it. It is a copy-paste of the Tier VIII tech tree French cruiser Brest. Only this Brest is a second Brest that has been surgically augmented to be, I suppose you could say, a little bit more firm, and by that I mean they buffed the armor scheme. We'll talk about that momentarily, but I think while we cover this ship, I should mention that this is a relatively short battle you're about to see. I picked it because it shows off the power of both the HE and AP pretty well, but I'm telling you, every single match I played in this particular warship over the past couple of days, and I've been trying to get something interesting, I've just been coming up short. Every single match I've played has been a tragic blowout, either in favor of the blue team or the red team. This is going to be one in favor of the blue team, and, well, there are many blowouts to pick from. I just chose this one because it's frankly the longest one, not the highest damage that I've gotten, but one that shows off what I think I need it to ultimately show off. And so, here's the commander, Hayase Yuka, the special BA commander that you can buy alongside of this ship. We've got Mikawa and Azerlane Neptune as the inspirations because that fourth row skill on this commander increases the damage that the cruiser's shells do by a small percentage for every 1% of HP you lose, and then Azerlane Neptune's base trait as the inspiration makes you deal extra AP damage per 1% HP lost, so I think those two things stack on each other nicely, and then Mikawa is the inspiration for concealment, of course. Everything on the stats that I read you here are going to be influenced by this commander build, but since this is a copy-paste of the Brest, in order to break down the stats, we might as well refer to the Wargaming article that spells out the differences here. Between this Utnapishtim thing and the Brest, the main battery reload time has been reduced from a base of 26 to 23 seconds. Turret traverse has been increased from 5 to 6 degrees per second. Main battery firing range reduced from 16.1 to 15.5 km. HP increased from 55.3k to 60k even. Improved repair party consumable. It can now repair up to 50% of damage to the Citadel and up to 60% to the rest of the ship. Keep that in mind for a moment because that description makes it sound better than it actually is. Detectability range by sea increased from a base of 11.7 to 12.6 km. Bow and stern armor thickness increased from 25 to 30 millimeters. That's probably the most significant change here. And then sonar consumable moved from slot 3 to slot 4. Main battery reload booster removed. Those are the differences between this thing and the actual Brest. Now, for some specifics on the stats, we already know the HP at 60k. That's pretty tanky for a cruiser, especially with the 30mm bow and stern plating. Of course, you also have 27mm upper belt armor, which can be overmatched by 16-inch guns or better, so if you're angled, they can get through that part of it, but of course the lower belt armor will bounce any battleship shell. And the deck armor is also 30mm, so that can bounce as well. With this build, the gun range is increased to 17.1 km, the reload time is 20.3 seconds, turret traverse at 25.4, maximum HE shell damage 4,800, and it does really good damage with the HE. Being large, 330mm guns, 8 in total, in 2 quad turrets on the bow. Well, the HE pens a lot, and the fire chance is 35%, so it does light a lot of fires, but if you're not using the HE, then you're using the AP, which does a maximum of 9,700, and being French, it's got pretty great pen. You'll see it in action once this Preussen gives us broadside in a little while. Also, we'll talk about the consumables as well. That repair party, it does restore more Citadel damage than the typical repair party, but it's not a super heal. Ultimately, it restores 360 HP per second for a total of 28. That's well in line with the conventional cruiser heal. It's enough to get you maybe like 2.5 bars of HP back. And I don't know that every cruiser restores quite that much, but this is not all that impressive in the total amount of HP it can restore. It just restores more Citadel damage, so I suppose that makes you a little bit tankier along with the improved armor. You can change out the repair party for the fighter plane consumable, but I don't know why on earth you would ever do that. You do have the DFAA consumable in the first slot, and there's no other choice aside from that. With that thing, as you can see against the Midway, we've shot down 15 planes. This thing does shoot down some planes. We're going to get the Clear Skies medal in this battle, I believe. And then in the third slot, you have a choice between engine boost and sonar. As you can see, I've elected for the engine boost, and that is because I think this is a slightly improved engine boost compared to the typical French one. Well, I suppose that's true of the heavy French cruiser line. I'm just thinking more in line of the French destroyers. Or no, I guess they're all 20%. That's the buff that the engine boost gives you. For some reason, I was thinking it's 15%. But this is the typical French improved engine boost. The sonar is a sonar with a ship detection range of 4.4 km, torpedo detect of 3.1, and a 96-second duration. I'm sure you could go either way on that. The sonar's probably more useful for utility purposes, you know, spotting torpedoes for yourself and your teammates, and also spotting enemy destroyers potentially if you're going to rush them in smoke. Maybe better than the engine boost, but I just kind of like the extra speed. Helps you reposition, get on flanks, utilize this AP against broadsides, etc. Speaking of which, you are very fast in this ship, although you are, I think, a little bit slower than the Brest. That might be down to my build, but on this thing, I've got a speed of 32.4 knots, turning circle of 720, and then a rudder shift of 12.5. Of course, the engine boost gets you up much closer to 40 knots, so that's kind of nice. And with the concealment mod and Makawa as an inspiration, we've got a detectability by sea of 10.2 kilometers. So it's not quite as stealthy as the Brest, which if you build that thing for concealment, you get 9.5. 10.2 relative to cruisers, of course, is really good, especially a cruiser with 30mm bow plating. Now, you might be tempted to think that because this thing has 30mm bow plating, you can just drive it forward, stop, reverse, and bow tank. And certainly you can pull that off in some situations, but keep in mind there are a lot of ships these days with 457mm guns and larger. You'll find them at Tier 7, Tier 8, and Legendary Tier, all the tiers that you would face if you played this thing. And any of those ships can go right through the bow, which means it's almost the same thing as having, say, this 25mm plating that the Brest does. Well, not really, because the 30mm plating is going to bounce 16-inch guns and lower. So is the deck armor, but unless somebody is aiming directly at your bow and just bouncing their shells off into the water, there are other parts of the ship to go for, such as the turrets, which I found can be taken out relatively easily, and it's never fun when you get 50% or 100% of your firepower reduced by an AP shell that knocks out the turrets, either temporarily or permanently. I haven't had one perma-broke yet, but I have been fighting one of these things that did. That guy didn't have a fun time, I can tell you that. So, for my final thoughts on this ship as this battle ends, I don't think I would recommend it. The way you buy it is in the special section of the store, and the price for this ship I think is pretty high. I would even call it astronomical. I suppose it's discounted slightly, but it's 27,000 doubloons. You get the ship and the commander at rank 1, so there's two things in the bundle, I guess, but if you're going to spend a ridiculous amount of money on these BA warships, I think you want to go with the Wave 1 BA warship, BA Montana, with Takanashi Hoshino. That is, out of all the BA ships, in my opinion, the most powerful. I would even call it broken. And Takanashi Hoshino is probably the best commander out of all of them as well. It's more money than this thing, but if you're going to spend that much money on Weeb content, BA Montana is what I recommend. Hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.